Chefs of Reddit. What was the most ridiculous excuse a customer had for sending back a meal? Story 1. When I was a kid, I worked as the shift manager at a Haagen-Dazs dip shop. It was on one of the busiest streets in town, and in the summer we would have lines out the door all day. Most of our customers during these periods were tourists. This is important, because we never really worried about losing their repeat business. One gentleman ordered an elaborate quadruple scoop banana split with oodles of everything. I obliged and whipped up the fucking SS diabetes of banana splits, complete with sprinkle-covered spires of whipped cream delicately drizzled with hot fudge and caramel. This thing had Oreo bits, brownie crumbles, Heath bar chunks. I'm talking the fucking works. Anyway, after I've completed this culinary masterpiece, it turns out with all those goodies my creation was almost $15, and dude was not having it. I pointed to the huge board behind me, displaying the prices of all of these delicious items this man had purchased, and told him I would get in trouble if I gave any more than a 10% discount, but he just refused to pay. So right there in the middle of a scorching hot summer day in an ice cream shop full of tourists and their kids, I held up this magnificent work of art, enough frozen goodness for at least 3 people, and offered it up for sale for $3. Needless to say, some dude with his kids right behind the original customer grabbed it right up and shared it with his family. Dude was livid. So I explained that he ordered a custom sundae the way he wanted it, and I sold it as a second-hand sundae that may not have been the way the purchaser wanted it. All in all, the whole thing cost the company pennies, and look on this asshole's face was priceless. Story 2. Once had someone return a burger saying there was a bug in it. Her kid interrupted with, "But mommy, you told me to put that there." I had the most smug look as she left shamed. Story 3. Not a chef, but as a server, a customer sent back a rare prime rib because it looked like a dead animal. I suppose he wanted me to go and get a live one. Story 4. Woman orders fries for her and her friend after church. I bring fries. "Oh, these are too cold. We want new fries." I go make the fries myself, cook them longer than normal, and immediately serve them after taking them out of the fryer. They were steaming still. The woman looks at it, touches it, and says, "Oh, these are ice cold." Exact words. Had to get the manager to deal with it. Story 5. Before I was a chef, I worked a year at a state fair in a Orient Express booth. A woman ordered a plate of sweet and sour chicken, and 10 minutes later came back with every fried chicken chunk broken open, chicken consumed, and demanded a refund saying there was no chicken in the breading. Story 6. I was working at Dairy Queen, not necessarily a chef, but I made some good blizzards. Anyways, this lady comes through drive-thru screaming that she wanted a small Oreo blizzard. No big deal. When I handed it out, she jabbed at it with her spoon and looked at it like it was a dead mouse. She stated, "The Oreos are too pulverized. I want another." Bitch, the Oreos come pre-shredded. Whatever they cost us, $25 to make, so I make her another one. Mixing it for about half a second, leaving massive chunks of Oreo on top and barely mixed in. I hand it out and she said it looks perfect. Her ulterior motive? She wanted the mistake for free. She asked, "Well, what are you going to do with that other one? Can I have it since you can't give it to another customer?" I said, "I'm sorry, the Oreos are too pulverized," and threw it away right in front of her. Story 7. As a waiter, I had a lady complain that her pasta was too soft, so I had it remade, but then it was too chewy, so I asked her if there was something else she'd like instead of the pasta. So she ordered lasagna. Yup. It was so awkward because by this time everyone else at her table was done eating. Story 8. In my table waiting days, I had a guy eat his entire 14-ounce prime rib, except for the fat. He had made a pile of the fat on his plate and asked me to weigh it so he could have a pro-rata refund equivalent to the weight of the fatty bits. For those who don't know, roasted prime rib contains a ring of fat in the middle and is usually served with some fat at the tip. People enjoy eating the fat with the meat. Edit. Here is what I'm talking about. You can see the ring of fat and the large chunk kept at the tip. By itself, the fat probably doesn't weigh much. But after the guy had ravaged his plate, the pile of disembodied fat resembled a neat stack of biological waste. Story 9. It turns out she couldn't eat it because she was allergic to shrimp. She ordered the jumbo shrimp pasta. I really thought that was self-explanatory. Another guy sent back his cheesesteak because it was too cold. It was pretty cold because he sat and drank for 45 minutes with it sitting in front of him before he even touched it. Edit. Edit. people love their typos. Cheesesteak does sound pretty funny, though. Story 10. Okay, this isn't the same thing but still completely ridiculous. I worked at an Italian restaurant as a waitress for a short time as the customers sucked. This lady, in her 40s, ordered a Hawaiian pizza and pitched a fit saying how we got her order wrong. I asked her what was wrong with it, and she said it wasn't a Hawaiian pizza, and the toppings were wrong. I looked at it, and it had diced tomatoes, pineapples, and ham. Exactly what the menu stated. Showing her this, she said, "What are you talking about? These are yellow. Pineapples are orange." Confused, I got my manager, and he tried explaining that pineapples are quite yellow, not orange. But if she didn't like it, she can order something else on the house. She got mad and said no, that she wanted this, but with the right pineapples. She started explaining what they looked like. I said, "Wait, do you mean oranges?" as she completely described oranges. She said, "No, pineapples," and started describing oranges again. At this point, I take my phone out, Google oranges and pineapples, and show her. She points at the oranges and yells at the top of her lungs, "Yes, those, I want those." My manager told her we do not have those and she can either pick something else or eat what she has. She left. Story 11. All right, server here. This happened to me last night. I work at a restaurant where we offer a grilled 2 lb, lobster for $60. Hefty enough, but you can also get it stuffed with crab meat and breadcrumbs for an additional $10. So, a woman at my table last night inquired about the additional price and goes, well, I'd love to get the stuffing, but I'm not going to run up the bill that much." I told her I completely understood, smiled, and ordered the simply grilled lobster. As it turns out, the kitchen made a mistake and prepared the lobster with the additional stuffing anyways. I brought it down to her and explained to her that there would be no additional charge since it was the kitchen's mistake, and to enjoy. She eats the entire lobster and then waves me over. "Yeah, I know this had the stuffing and everything, but that's just not what I ordered and I'd like them to remake it for me." I'm just not very full because it was mostly breadcrumbs. I told her politely that it's exactly the same amount of meat, just with breadcrumbs and crab added. And she said then that it seemed like we had removed a lot of the lobster to fill with breadcrumbs. At this point, my manager came over and assured her this was not the case. Still, she demanded that we make her another. She started making a real fuss about how this wasn't what she ordered, and that the enhanced version of the dish left her hungry. Needless to say, the kitchen was pissed. We remade it, didn't charge her for the second one, and even tried to comp her dessert to keep the happy. And what did she do after we kissed this much? Stiffed me on a $140 tab, making sure to write on the bill, "The service was horrible," because I think she picked up on our disgust at her lack of tact. Fun times. Edit. Thank you so much, stranger, for the Reddit gold. Made my night. Story 12. Where I work, people will often ask for their undercooked burgers to be remade. It's normally no big deal, but every once in a while you'll get a ridiculous customer. This one time, a customer came up to the counter and told us their burger was undercooked and demanded we recook it. Unfortunately, they decided not to tell us until they were 3/4 done with the food. So my manager happily obliged and had their burger remade. After it was finished, he cut the burger into fourths and gave the customer a fresh quarter of a burger. Well done. The look on their face was justice. Story 13. We had a grouper entree, and the wholesaler was out of grouper, so my Sue got some Corvina instead. It looks and tastes just like grouper. Forgot to mention the substitution to the servers, and a gentleman sent it back claiming it wasn't grouper. I just had to give him a slow clap for having the taste buds to tell the difference. I comped his meal without complaint and jokingly offered him a job. Story 14. When I was younger, I was a cook for a really popular Denny's. It was basically the cult spot to go to. Wedding, Denny's after, proms, Denny's after. You get the idea. At the time, I had bright pink hair, something to keep in mind. Now, it's tapering down a bit. It's around 1 or so it's before bar rush, so my other cook for the shift took a break, leaving just me. One of the waitresses come back saying that one of her customers found a hair in her French toast. I saw the plate. Everything had been eaten aside from 2 little pieces, with a long black hair between. Now, I made her a new order. French toast, bacon, hash browns, and brought it back to the table. As I put it down, I said, "Here is your remade order. I would like to point out that your waitress has short blonde hair. I removed my hat. I have pink hair. And you have long black hair, conveniently the same color as the hair you found. Next time you want free food, go to a fucking soup kitchen. And went back to my line. My night manager and GM were both huge stoners at the time and thought the whole thing was hilarious. Story 15. Obligatory, not a chef. My mom, when she was a waitress at a diner, had a regular who would come in for Sunday lunch every week. She would send back the meal every time, as in literally every time, and she would make up lame excuses. It got to the point where my dad, the chef at the diner, would just hold the same plate in the back and send it back out to her. She would accept it every time. Story 16. Once upon a time, I worked at Pizza Hut. Customer: I would like a meat lover's pizza with no meat. At that time, that would mean she'd only have sauce and cheese, and this pizza would cost more. A more expensive cheese pizza. Us: here's your cheese pizza, ma'am. Her: I didn't want a cheese pizza, I wanted a meat lover's pizza. She did this many times. Edit: she just wanted cheese. And because she dealt with so many different employees who worked different shifts, not everyone got the memo about her. So they all made the same mistake over and over by saying, cheese pizza. Eventually, someone made fun of her to a customer, and she was sitting right behind them in another booth. That employee was later fired, not for that incident, but because she was stealing money. Edit. A lot of pizza worker camaraderie here. You guys might like our tales from The Pizza Guy. Story 17. Stealing this story from a server friend of mine. Horrible woman comes in and orders the mussels. After my friend brings the plate out, the woman claims that the kitchen stole the meat out of the shells. My friend tries to explain that live mussels are placed in the pan, so it is not possible that there are more shells than meat pieces. The woman then spreads out the shells and meat on the tablecloth to prove her point. Discovered she was wrong and stormed out. The awkward part was that the woman was at a table of 3 other friends who were mortified and paid for the meal with a huge tip. Story 18. Currently working as a chef, got a few creme brulees back. One of the times being that it was too brown, and another one when a customer complained about black dots in the custard, being the vanilla. Story 19. We once had a guest who sent her salad back to the kitchen because the dressing was too salty. While the waitress, who was also the owner, was in the kitchen getting her another salad, she went to the grocery store next door and got her own salad dressing. She then wanted the cost of the salad dressing taken off her bill. The owner, of course, said, no. Edit. Since a few of you think that this woman was reasonable, I'll give you the longer version of what happened. She never even asked for another type of dressing, she just left and bought another one. If she had asked, then the owner could have appeased her in some way. We made all of our own dressings and I could have whipped her up something that she liked. I've done it before. Besides the fact that she got a store-bought dressing that was loaded with salt. When her salad came out the second time, she complained that the spinach wasn't cleaned of all the veins and stems properly. She ate the whole salad. She complained about the selection of soft drinks that we had and how ridiculous it was that we didn't have Coke. And she wasn't very quiet about it all either. In short, she was an Edit 2. A lot of you thinks that it's ridiculous that we didn't have Coke. Lots of restaurants don't serve Coke. We served locally made sodas that didn't have all the in them that Coke has. You people need to stop eating at TGIF and Olive Garden and have a good meal at, and support local restaurants. FTW. Story 20. Just yesterday, I am a server. I had a table order the prime rib, and when the prime rib came out to her, she was extremely mad that her order was not correct. Apparently, she wanted the French dip sandwich. Totally the same thing, and yes, I was supposed to know that by ordering the prime rib, a dish we have on our menu, she actually meant the French dip. She wanted her meal comped. Story 21. I was slumming it, cooking brunches at a tennis club because I needed the extra cash. Same customer, 2 different incidents. The first time, this woman sent back bacon because it was too salty. I warmed the same strips back up and sent it out to her again. It was much better. She came in the next weekend and sent back her fresh fruit crepes because they were too sweet. Rewarmed the plate and sent it back out. She said it was great. Story 22. I had dinner with a crazy family friend that refused to eat anything brought to the table. Old country-style restaurant, no menus. You eat what they bring out. She insisted that they prepare her special portions of their traditional recipe dishes, prepared precisely how she wanted them, and went back to the kitchen to supervise that they were following her instructions exactly. She told us that she had them remake her vegetables 3 times, with pride. I was 12 and it was my birthday dinner. I've never been so embarrassed. I asked the waiter to take me into the kitchen. I told my folks that after she went back, I wanted to see the big kitchen. What I actually did was apologize to all the cooking and wait staff for my guest. For years, I thought my parents didn't know. What I did not know is that the manager stopped my mother on the way out and complimented her on having such a polite child. I was 33 when she told me. Story 23. Not a chef, but I was a server. The guy sent back gumbo he ordered just as I brought it to him because he didn't want it anymore. It was my first day, so I just brought it back to the kitchen, but I should have just told him no. The restaurant business sucks. Be nice to those people. Story 24. When I worked at a restaurant in Cincinnati, Ohio throughout high school, I got to see some interesting things. I worked at a family-owned restaurant like Moe's Mexican Food. It was a Tex-Mex place that was good food for $10 meals or whatever. Anyway, this guy got a taco salad, so a lettuce base, the meat, onions, beans, tomatoes, the dressing and cheese. Then you added whatever you wanted on top for the extras. Well, it was a really hot day in the summer, and this guy got takeout. Very standard order at the beginning of my shift. I made the food. So towards the end of my shift, I get a complaint. I'm like, WTF, I didn't think I had messed up. The manager says for this guy to come back in and we were going to access what we did wrong. And if we messed up, refund this guy. He shows up with the taco salad that had been sitting in his car for hours. The time on receipt was close to 4 hours old. The lettuce was soggy, the cheese melted, and in the container it was in was watery. This had this thing obviously sitting in his car for hours. He expected us to refund his money and give him a free fresh salad. We say, no. It was his own fault. If he had taken it anywhere and ate it within an hour or anything, it would have been perfectly fine. He proceeds to throw a temper tantrum. Mind you, this is a 35-ish-year-old man. He finally concedes to us not giving him free food, walks towards the door with his gross salad, says in a loud voice for the whole dining room to hear, "Trash cans full," opens his salad and dumps it on the floor and walks out like he got us back. What a that guy was. Trash can was like half full too. To add another story, one time the owner made a meal wrong for a customer. Usually we replace all incorrectly made orders. This big woman had ate almost all of her meal and found a tiny onion. She got a meal, so you got multiple dishes and brought them all back, even thought here was only an onion in the almost finished salad. She wanted everything replaced in to-go containers. The owner said no, and she threw the food at him. He was on the register and now covered in food. He stood there looking at her and said, "Happy?" She stormed out. Story 25. The only pizza we have at our restaurant is a simple margarita pizza. One guy had me make him a Meat Lovers John combo pizza with white sauce, which we don't have, so I had to reduce some Alfredo sauce. Took roughly 15-20 minutes to make, and he sent it back because the bottom for the pizza was too dark for him. He insisted I cooked it too close to the flames, and that's why it tasted too burnt for him. The issue is we use a 3-deck conventional oven with no flames in sight. Fucker. Edit. Spelling. Story 26. I was eating at the restaurant at the Four Seasons Hotel in Maui, and a nasty old woman sent her lamb chops back, probably a $90 meal, because there wasn't salt on the table. She got the entire refund after bitching to the manager for 45 minutes because the tables didn't have salt and pepper on them. The food itself wasn't even the issue, I think. Story 27. My dad's a chef, and on a few occasions customers would send back their food because there was blood coming out of their steak. They had ordered them medium rare, and it's not blood, but meat juices. People. Story 28. I was a server some time ago. My restaurant sold large and small bowls of soup. Once, someone ordered a large bowl and finished half, then asked if they could be charged for a small bowl. Story 29. Not sure if this applies, but worked as a shift supervisor at Pizza Hut. Woman with 3 kids has a long wait to get a table. I felt bad, so offered to pick up her bill and then sat them. She ordered 18 pizzas for her and her 3 kids. It taught me a valuable lesson that being nice while running a business is impossible. Edit. Words are hard. Story 30. Sir, there are teeth in my food. Wow, are you serious? Okay, I'll come check it out. Sir, those are onions. Well, it's weird. Can I order something else? Story 31. When I was working in a kitchen, a woman said her soup was too hot, and she'd burnt her mouth. Of course, she'd already finished the soup. Edit. The soup was never microwaved in that kitchen. So the chef, being the nice guy he is, gave her some sorbet to cool down her mouth. She was a rude person. Story 32. Not a chef, but a server at the time. Dude ordered a pizza that had fresh jalapenos on it. They're cut lengthwise. When I gave it to him, he flipped out and asked why we put bell peppers on it. I told him those were jalapenos, but he wasn't having it. He walked right into our kitchen and told the chef he couldn't believe he didn't know the difference between bell peppers and jalapenos. The chef just took out a whole jalapeno and said, "This is a jalapeno, right?" Guest, "Yeah." Chef cuts it as it appears on the pizza. "And that's what you have, right?" Guest with a stunned look on his face. "Yeah." He left me an awful tip. Story 33. I used to work at a zoo snack bar. We had some of those ice cream carts that had wheels, and we would roll them out to different areas of the park and then stay there for the remainder of the day. On this particular day, I was stationed at the playground, one of the worst places to be, because children would run rampant throughout the park while their parents sat around on benches chatting with friends, or just weren't really paying attention to what their children were doing. I'd have hundreds of kids come up to me on a daily basis and beg for ice cream. But of course I couldn't just give it to them. I'd always ask if they had any money, and they never did. And I'd tell them to go ask their parents for some if they wanted money. Not my problem. On this particular day, it was exceptionally hot, and one kid had a hardcore temper tantrum when I told him I couldn't just give him ice cream. Like full-blown, on the floor crying and screaming, and I'm just like WTF, and continue to help other customers around his howling body sprawled on the ground. The brat finally pulls himself together and goes to find his mother. About 15 minutes later, Bratty and his mom stroll over to the cart, child sniffling and happy that he persuaded his mother for ice cream, and they start checking out the selections. We had about 15 different ice cream options, all with prices clearly marked. The kid picks out the most expensive option, and the mom is all like, "Whatever you want, sweet baby." I hand her the $3, $50 ice cream, and she unwraps it and hands it to him. He immediately started drooling and slobbering all over it, and it was a day that was hot so it started melting quickly. She asks me how much it is, and I tell her, gesturing towards the clearly marked sign. She starts screaming at me about how she's not paying that much, and I'm just like, "Sorry, ma'am, there's nothing I can do. He's already started eating it." She's like flipping out at me and finally gives me the money, all in change, mostly pennies and nickels. Then she asks for napkins. Fuck me. The park wouldn't let us hand out napkins because too many people littered, and the amount that it costed daily to clean up all the napkins in the park was too much for the park to afford. Or so they said. Regardless, not my problem. I politely explain why we don't have napkins and apologize for the inconvenience, and this woman literally flips A. She grabs the now disgusting drippy ice cream from her son's mouth, starting another temper tantrum, this time with better reason. Literally throws it at me and reaches into my tip jar and pulls out $3.50. She stomped away with her hysterical son, and I had to try and wipe the ice cream off my shirt with leaves from a nearby tree, and was forced to sit at my stand for the rest of the day, unable to do anything about it. Story 34. I am a line cook in a fairly upscale seafood restaurant. Once in the middle of a busy Saturday dinner rush, we got an order for an ahi tuna tartare. The way we plate our tartares is pretty elaborate and takes a good 5 to 7 minutes to create. I happened to be working expo that day and was tasked with building the tartare. I sent it out and it was fucking beautiful. Wasabi and sriracha aioli, designs surrounding the slices of cucumber, seaweed salad, and ginger piled around the perfectly stacked raw tuna marinated in ponzu and eel sauce. I sent it out the window, and it came back almost immediately because the lady who had ordered it doesn't do raw fish. Long story short, she requested we saute the fish and rebuild the plate for her with a gross pile of well-done cooked tuna chunks slopped in the middle. Please know what it is you're ordering before you order. Story 35. When I was a kid, my family owned several pizza places. I didn't hang around them much because I was fairly young, but my older sisters worked at the big one doing waitressing and cashiering. My sister told me that one night the well-dressed father of a large family that had ordered several large pizzas tried to get out of paying for the pizzas because the pizza didn't have sauce, cheese, ingredients, all the way to the edge. The family had eaten the entire pizzas except the crusts. My sister refused to refund his money, he threw a huge fit, reduced my sister to tears, he kept yelling and demanded to see the owner, my dad. Dad came out, saw my sister sobbing, got the story from one of the cooks, didn't say a word, just slammed the guy's head through the wall and well into the store next door. Guy had to be taken away on a stretcher. The staff and a couple of customers told the cops the customer had tried to hit my sister so Dad didn't get arrested. Writing this out, it sounds like we were trailer trash, but we weren't. Dad didn't get physical often, but when he did, he played for keeps. Story 36. This soup is too hot always killed me when I worked in a restaurant. Quick tangent. If you are mean to people in the restaurant biz, fuck you. When I recently went on a job interview, I had to do a group dinner interview and some sent something back for a ridiculous reason to try and look cool in front of the boss. Boss stopped interview right then and there and told the guy he can go home now. Boss looked at us all after the guy left and said, 100% of the time if a nice person is mean to a waiter, they're not actually a nice person. Never agreed with something more. Got the job, that guy. Story 37. I was an expediter in a nice local restaurant. We had an open buffet around Christmas, and one of the customers complained that the tiny little onion rings were rubbery. It was fried calamari. Edit. They weren't really rubbery. They were slightly chewy, but it was fresh calamari. The lady was just pure 300 IB redneck. I didn't wish to be so rude when I first typed this out. The owner thought it was hysterical and explained that it wasn't what she thought it was. After figuring it out, she proceeded to ask for hot sauce. Story 38. I'm not a chef, and this isn't exactly relevant, but I remember being in a restaurant in southern France, sitting on the table across from an American family. They were lucky to have a waiter who spoke pretty good English. Bearing in mind this area wasn't massively popular with tourists, so you would perhaps expect people visiting to make some effort in speaking French. This family spoke total English to the waiter. They didn't even say thank you or goodbye in French, which IMO shows you're making a little effort in trying to reciprocate the other person's effort to speak your language. Anyway, their bolognese came, and as soon as it was placed down on the table, they were complaining about how there was no meatballs with it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but bolognese does not always infer meatballs come with it. So they start getting kinda with the waiter, who at this point is struggling to understand the family who are complaining, I've never seen bolognese without meatballs. I hear them talking to each other later saying maybe the meatballs will be brought out later on a separate plate. People can be so ignorant and kinda disrespectful in other countries. Story 39. I once had a customer that had just had a haircut order food, eat 90% of what was on his plate, then send it back because it had hair in it. His own hair, from his stupid fucking haircut. I refused to replace the meal and told him if he wants to try skipping out on his bill, he can discuss it with the police. Anyone who tries to send a meal back after eating nearly all of it can just off. I got out of food service entirely because I got sick of customers like that. Story 40. Not a chef, but was working at customer service at a Food Lion. A woman comes in with 80/20 ground beef her husband bought 2 days prior. When I asked what was the problem, she told me that her husband had bought bad meat. When I asked her if it was spoiled or had a problem, she said that the beef was pink. That was just one of the days that I got written up for laughing at a customer to their face. Story 41. Used to work for a sandwich restaurant that you filled out your order on a paper bag and wrote your name on it. And when it was done, we would call out your name and you would come pick it up. The sandwich making process took about 5 minutes, so most people would go and fill up their drinks and sit down to wait. But not a few special snowflakes. They would come in, order, walk to the end of the prep line and just grab the sandwiches that were there as the actual owners of said sandwich were approaching, sit down, and begin to eat it. The sandwich thieves would then get very flustered that the sandwich was nothing like they ordered and push angrily to the front of the line to yell and complain, while the people whose sandwiches had been taken begin to do the same, and we have to make a ton of replacement sandwiches because a group of assholes don't understand the concept that if they didn't fill out the bag for that sandwich and if their name isn't on it, it's not theirs. Story 42. I had one guy send back his pizza because it didn't look like the picture of a pizza he had on his phone. The picture had nothing to do with our restaurant or compared to anything we offered. He walked it back to the kitchen himself, told us it was overdone. Honestly, I would have said it was closer to underdone, and shoved the picture at us. We did end up trying to make something similar to what he requested, but if he wouldn't have been such a yeah, we would have been much more willing to accommodate. Story 43. Not a chef, but when I was a waiter, I had this one guy ask for his steak bleu. I brought him the steak, and about 3 minutes later he calls me back and tells me that the steak might not be rare enough. In case you guys are unfamiliar with the term blue, basically means it's so rare that it's still cold on the inside. Any rarer, and the steak would have been completely raw. For reference. Edit. Sorry guys, made a mistake. I accidentally said that the guy said the steak was too rare. But actually he said that it's not rare enough. Story 44. I choked on an avocado pit that was in my sushi. She threatened to sue the company. We had to show her an actual avocado pit to end her complaints. Edit, because I can't write. Story 45. Once had a guy order a grade 9 Wagyu Scotch fillet medium rare. This steak we sold for $63. I think it was rather expensive. He got the steak, cut it into tiny pieces because it was slightly under MR. Really massive move because usually if someone says their steak is undercooked, you just chuck it back on the grill for a few seconds to get it to the right doneness. So yeah, we get this $60 steak back in pieces and have to cook another for this. We make another one, no worries. He does the exact same thing. Cuts it into tiny pieces, says it's undercooked. This guy has now wasted $120 worth of food. The whole kitchen is fucking livid. He then orders a pasta, which I make, and send out. The guy eats the entire thing, says it was, and then when he goes to pay, he said to the waitress, "Just charge me for a bowl of chips, it's okay, the boss will understand because we're friends." I don't know if the waitress did or not, and I'm not sure what the boss thought about it either because he was out for the night. Thinking of that story really pisses me off. Story 46. Edit real quick. Not a chef, but reading the stories made me remember mine. I used to deliver Chinese food, and one night I delivered to some guys who were obviously tripping. The guy who answered the door's pupils were popping out of his eyes, and his friend had built a fort out of what I'm pretty sure was a combination of pillows and garbage bags. The delivery went okay. I acted cool enough about it so they didn't freak out. But we got a call back later. My boss did not speak the best English, and what ended in a shouting match over the phone began a journey for me. The guy was demanding a refund because his food was bad, so my boss was happy to oblige under one condition. We get the food back. So I ventured back out to their humble abode, wishing I'd bought a gun for driving delivery in bad neighborhoods like I always said I would. Came to the door, and Mr. Pupils was much less friendly this time. But I'm pretty sure he forgot how to be angry like a normal person because he kept raising his voice to a certain point and then came right back down to a normal talking voice within seconds. He asked me, "What the is up, man? Is this some kind of sick joke?" I laughed and said, "No, man, they really want the food back." But this was not why he was upset. No, the fucking fortune cookie, man. He handed me the paper, which said something so inconsequential that I don't even remember what it said, or if I ever processed it. That's just some Buddha man. Looking at things from a different perspective, you know? But apparently, I was wrong. He informed me it was a Chinese death threat, and that they'd poisoned his food. So here I'm stuck. This wouldn't give me his half-eaten General Tso's meal because he was saving it for the FDA, if I wanted it, but my boss paid me well and was always flexible with my college schedule. I told him that he had the right to do that, and that I wanted to call my boss to let him know I couldn't get it back. Stepped outside and he slammed the door on me. Boss said, "Don't worry about it," and I really should have just left. But I wanted to let this guy know it was okay since he was tripping. I knocked, he opened the door, and flung the General Tso's all over me. I just kind of stood there making eye-to-eye contact with this. And then he said, "Be sick, you fucking traitor," and closed the door. And they didn't even tip.